I had kind of an interesting Sunday, if you will. It started out like any other day. I mean, I come to the shop, I do what I do. Usually I'm working on videos on Sundays anyway, so I came in, just, got in, everything was fine. Probably about 20 minutes or so after I got seated and everything else like that. I'm just sitting there, going through emails and, the rest of it, and I hear this sound. It was like a knock on the door. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. Like, why would there be anybody? You know what? It's Sunday. I'm not going to bother. I just ignored it. But about 30 seconds after that, the only thing I could really describe that is like the sound of a crowbar or something like that, or metal falling. And I immediately knew. I'm like, wait a minute, something's not right. So I did what any other like super hardcore, full-blooded American would do. Get out of my desk, grab my wife's purse, walk up to the door all secret and quietly. I am going to slap this son of a guy with a Chanel, because I hear that that's pretty painful. But as soon as I pop open the door, there's nobody there. But I also noticed that my door handle was very much broken. So not a whole lot I could actually do about that. So the biggest problem that I have is that it's Sunday and the lock is going to be triple to replace, or at least the handle will, right? You're going to replace the whole assembly, right? The lock itself is still working fine, deadbolt's good, and this is an industrial, hardcore, super security lock. There's a reason why it's on there and why just the handle broke on the other side and not the whole thing. But if a crackhead comes back after failing, he's probably going to come back with some tools or, who knows what. And I'm not ready to sit here and camp out all night and wait for somebody to come back. I mean, it's just, none of this stuff is worth it. So there's no point in replacing the handle right now, presuming that they're going to come back. But I need to do something about that door and barricade it in there. Now, anybody who's ever owned a business before knows that you have to abide by certain codes. Things like the fire marshal coming in here and saying, if that door doesn't open, you can't run your business. That means that I can't weld it shut. That also means that if I did, I'd have to buy a whole new door by the time I cut it back open the next morning. Something has to be temporary, or at least temporary enough until I can build a permanent system or design all that. I don't have all the time to do all that in one day. There are several, but I can't get all that done in one day. Now, I started by grabbing some scraps that I had laying around, and I ran over to a machine called the Universal Fabricator that's provided by Shop Outfitters. This thing makes life quick and easy when it comes to bending tubes and bending plates and all kinds of stuff. You can bend scrolls, ornaments, whatever. It's all air over hydraulic powered, and it's pretty simple for doing non-specific things. I don't need to measure any of this stuff out. Now, my whole idea behind this one, there are simpler ways, but the whole idea is that this is, one, is not permanent or nor a permanent solution. Two, it's more like one of those engineering brain teaser puzzles where it doesn't matter how hard you work at it, as long as you get the sequence correct, you'll get it out of there just fine. But the harder you struggle any other way, it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse. So no matter what, this door handle is ridiculously strong. It will hold, everything's fine with it. It's not just gonna break off with ease. And of course, with this system in place here, the way that I designed it, nothing's gonna come off unless you have the sequence correct, in which that's kind of tricky. Now, the design of this system is actually really simple. Two of the tubes run across the door jamb horizontally while one tube runs vertically. The vertical tube has a loop at the bottom of it which prevents the lower horizontal tube from coming off even if the vertical tube is lifted up. Two dog legs have to be bent into the vertical tube. One leg wraps around the inside or behind the door handle and then back around to the outside of the upper horizontal tube. The bends have to be positioned in just a way that prevents the upper horizontal tube from falling or being lifted off, since the top leg of the vertical tube terminates past the door jamb. This creates a mechanical lock. It only gets stronger when force is applied in any direction or on any individual tube. In order to remove all three pieces, at least two of them must move before you can remove the lower horizontal tube, which can only be looped off of the system from inside of the door. So after a few welds and a few bends and a few setting up and measuring and all the rest of that good stuff, we arrive at this. As long as you have the sequence correct, first you got to have the dog leg piece go behind the handle, then you slide the upper tube on. Then you hook around the lower tube, and if you have it bent just right, it'll wedge itself for the most part in place. The little tiny block of wood at the bottom provides a little tension on the entire system. So you can't even open the door to get this off of there. And if you could somehow miraculously cut your way through or anything else like that, you know, more power to you. Maybe you deserved everything that was in here. But then you still have the rest of the security system to deal with. But I digress. The whole point of this one is if you have just the bare minimum, some little things here and there laying around, and you devise something very clever, you can make a temporary crackhead deterrent system.